Well, good afternoon and welcome everyone. This is an open meeting of the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board on November 25th, 2013. We welcome you who have joined us today in person or listening to the webcast of this meeting. Today, the board will consider recommendations to adopt a strategic plan for 2013 through 17, to approve the PCAOB's 2014 budget in accordance with Section 109B of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002. Before we proceed with the agenda, I will note for the record that all board members are present and voting. The only order of business before the board today are staff recommendations that the board adopt a strategic plan for fiscal years 2013 through 17 and approve the proposed budget for fiscal year 2014. Under Section 109B of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, the board is required to establish a budget for each fiscal year no later than 1 month prior to the beginning of the fiscal year and to submit it to the Securities and Exchange Commission for approval. As the board's fiscal year follows the calendar year, we are here today to meet this requirement. To present the staff's recommendations, I will in a moment turn to our Chief Administrative Officer, Darrell Pauly, and our Deputy Chief Administrator Officer, Bill Wiggins. But first, the occasion requires a note. The announcement went out this morning that after 30 years of service at the Federal Reserve Board and 5 years of service at the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, our Chief Administrative Officer, Darrell Pauly, is retiring. I would have to tell you this is a moment which I hoped would not come while I had the responsibilities of this office. And I can only say that after 35 years of unremitting public service, anyone is entitled to have time and thought and space to do the things that someone as conscientious and as hardworking and as Darrell Pauly has always put off. As Darrell Pauly has put off, and that's where we are today. This is a very, in many ways, poignant moment for the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board because we lose someone in Darrell Pauly, whom I have come to rely on and regard as a colleague and a friend. This is part of the normal transition of an organization, of course, but it doesn't make it any less painful when it happens. And Darrell, we all wish you well for a career, another career, and a rest, and time to do the things you want to do, which are all well deserved. And with that, recognize Mr. Pauly and Mr. Wiggins. I'm sure, by the way, my colleagues on the board will want to add to this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for those kind words, and good afternoon to the board members. Bill Wiggins, Jim Hearn, and I are pleased to present for your consideration and approval the 2013-2017 strategic plan and the 2014 budget of $258.4 million. The strategic plan before you is the result of an organization-wide effort that began early this year and reflects your foresight, views, and guidance as to the future direction of the PCAOB. The plan also reflects thoughtful contributions from the PCAOB's divisions and offices and includes performance measures in conformance with the SEC's budget rule. The document serves as the foundation for the 2014 budget. The 2014 budget is the result of a robust process that began in March with the submission to the SEC of the PCAOB's budget outlook letter, followed by the SEC's letter of budget guidance and economic assumptions in April. Throughout the spring, the Budget Office and I met with you and your staff, as well as divisions and offices, to formulate a draft budget by midsummer. From August to October, the budget staff and staff from the PCAOB's divisions and offices met with SEC representatives to provide a detailed overview of the budget and to answer specific questions posed by the SEC. The result of those meetings and the discussions that we and you have had with the SEC is the 2014 budget that is before you this afternoon. The budget process is extremely demanding, and I want to extend a special thanks to Bill, to Jim, Yas Masagian, and Bobby Reichert for their extraordinary efforts. I also want to thank the divisions and offices for their generous and valuable assistance, and of course, each of you and your staff for your support and direction throughout the strategic planning and budgeting processes. Bill will present overviews and highlights of the strategic plan and the 2014 budget. I concur with the forthcoming recommendation that the board approve both documents. Thank you. Bill?
Thanks, Darrell. Mr. Chairman, as indicated, I'm here to provide an overview of the board's strategic plan and related budget for 2014. Since the strategic plan serves as the foundation for the formulation of the budget, I will start with it and then move on to the budget. The strategic plan before you today refines and supersedes the 5-year strategic plan that the board approved this time last year. Consistent with last year's strategic plan, this plan continues to have overarching goals around the PCAOB's knowledge, our relevance, and our people. In updating the plan, we worked with you and all the divisions and offices to develop several new strategies or make revisions to existing strategies. One of the most significant enhancements to the strategic plan this year is its increased emphasis on the use of economic analysis in the PCAOB's work. In particular, the strategic plan includes a new strategy that establishes a Center for Economic Analysis to focus on integration of economic analysis throughout the PCAOB's programs. I will discuss the Center's planned activities for 2014 in further detail momentarily. Similar to last year's plan, the strategic plan before you also continues to include a SWOT analysis that describes the PCAOB's current plans for addressing specific areas that warrant ongoing attention, consideration, or monitoring. In revising the plan, we also sought input and feedback from SEC staff as part of the review process. A draft of the plan was provided to the SEC in midsummer, and working with you, we incorporated the SEC's comments as appropriate. Also, consistent with prior plans and with the SEC's budget rule, the strategic plan includes numerous quantitative performance measures and qualitative indicators that are intended to assist the PCAOB in assessing its progress toward achieving its mission. We intend to work with divisions and office leadership and the new Center for Economic Analysis leadership to further refine these measures as we gain experience with them, and as appropriate, consider adding new measures in the future. With the overview of the strategic plan complete, I'll turn to the budget. As in prior years, the budget for 2014 is organized so that the activities and resource needs of each division and office are directly mapped to the goals, objectives, and strategies in the strategic plan. As Darrell stated, the proposed budget for 2014 is $258.4 million. This budget represents a 5.2% increase over the PCAOB's 2013 approved budget of $245.6 million. This is approximately a 10.6% increase over the PCAOB's 2013 revised spending plan of $233.6 million, and roughly a 15% increase over our projected 2013 spending level. As in prior years, the largest components of the 2014 budget are personnel, which accounts for roughly 73% of our expenses, rent and facilities exclusive of personnel costs, which accounts for 9%, travel, which accounts for 7%, consulting and professional fees, which account for 5%, and information and technology exclusive of those other items, which accounts for about 4%. With regard to personnel, the budget assumes total end-of-year headcount of 864 employees, 25 more than the 2013 approved budget of 839. During 2013, we added 4 new positions, so putting those current year positions aside, we plan to add a total of 21 new positions in 2014. The 21 new positions are allocated as follows: 5 positions for the Division of Registration and Inspections for the Interim Broker-Dealer Inspections Program, 5 positions to establish the new Center for Economic Analysis, 5 positions for the Office of Information Technology, 3 positions for the Office of the Chief Auditor, 2 of which are slated to be economists, 2 for the Office of Administration, and 1 for the Division of Enforcement and Investigations. With regard to the staff to be hired into the 5 positions in the Center of Economic Analysis, we anticipate that they will focus on advising the board and staff on ways to enhance the PCAOB's use of economic analysis in its programs, including ways to use economic analysis to identify and analyze economic audit risks, and to assist with refining and improving our performance metrics, as I mentioned, and to promote economic research on the role of the audit in capital markets and investor protection. Separate from all the new positions I just discussed, the PCAOB does anticipate carrying over a number of vacant positions from 2013. We now think those will be filled early in 2014. The second largest cost category for 2014 is rent and facilities, which is funded at $22.3 million. This amount covers both our long-term space needs and anticipated rent increases in many locations. With a number of our leases set to expire next year, such as in San Mateo, the budgeted amount also covers the costs of moving to different space and to other locations, and for our other leases that are coming up, renegotiating and undertaking any small space renovations that we may need. The next cost category, the third largest cost category, is travel. The 2014 budget for travel is $17.4 million, approximately $600,000 more than in the 2013 approved budget. In 2014, the PCAOB expects that staff will take about 6,200 trips during the year, with inspections-related trips accounting for 86% of all PCAOB trips. Most of the other divisions and offices are not anticipating any material increase in travel over the 2013 levels. Moving on to IT, the 2014 budget includes roughly $10.1 million for the non-personnel and non-consulting part of IT. When you include those two components, the IT budget for next year is $25.8 million, $2.3 million more than in the 2013 budget. The funding for 2014 relates to maintenance activities, required inflation and contract-related adjustments, and ongoing project expenses, such as for the deployment of a new human resources management system and enhancements to the issuer and broker-dealer funding system. The resources for all of the above activities are funded through the accounting support fee that is levied on issuers and broker-dealers. The accounting support fee associated with the 2014 budget is $252 million. This amount is somewhat lower than the budget because we expect to spend a little bit less in 2013 than we had planned. This underspend will fund a portion of our needs next year. The accounting support fee for issuers and broker-dealers is $225 million and $26.6 million, respectively. The budget also assumes that the PCAOB will continue to have 5 months of operating resources for the first 5 months of operating resources for early 2015 in its working capital reserve by the end of next year. Separately, it's worth noting that the PCAOB continues to be subject to the sequester process that was put in motion under the Budget Control Act of 2011. The administration's sequester order for 2014, issued April 10, 2013, requires the PCAOB to refrain from spending a net of $6 million of the budget before you today. Therefore, as we have discussed with you, we have begun discussions with Commission staff regarding how to accommodate this adjusted spending level, as we were similarly required to do in 2013 during the first year of sequestration. Assuming the Commission approves the 2014 budget, the PCAOB ultimately will operate at a 2014 funding level of $252.4 million. We will, of course, continue to keep you apprised of any sequestration-related developments that may arise during the year. The development of the strategic plan and the budget, as Darrell noted, was an organization-wide effort, and I'd be remiss if I didn't thank everyone for their assistance throughout the process. As Jim mentioned, I certainly want to thank Phoebe and Jim and Yas and Bobby And I'd also like to specifically thank Jim again. Jim Hearn joined the PCAOB's budget office last year, and the timing of his arrival could not have been better. His expertise in the area of sequestration has been invaluable to the entire organization, and he truly deserves specific acknowledgement. We also received significant support from board councils, especially Sam Ross and Steve Richards, as well as from divisions and office heads who, as always, are highly responsive to the tight deadlines required by the budget rule and budget process. In addition, I greatly appreciate the support from you all. Separately, as the chairman already stated, I'd like to also thank Darrell for his leadership and support during each of the last 5 budget cycles, and to congratulate him on his impending retirement. I think I can speak for everyone in the Office of Administration and PCAOB when I say that we wish him well and will miss him. With that, Mr. Chairman, I formally recommend that the board approve the 2013 through 2017 strategic plan and 2014 budget. My colleagues and I are happy to answer any questions that you or the board may have.
Thank you, Bill. Well, as you've noted, the 2014 budget and the related strategic plan are the result of considerable effort and thought both by board members and senior programmatic staff. I want to express my own appreciation for our Chief Administrative Officer, Darrell Pauley, you, our Deputy CEO, Bill Wiggins, Jim Hearn, Yost Masagian, Bobby Reichert from our budget office, and our Secretary, Phoebe Brown, who worked tirelessly on refining the budget, the initiatives, the strategic plan, and all the work that went into these 2 documents over the course of the year to get us where we are today. I also want to thank the SEC's Deputy Chief Accountant, Brian Croto, his Associate Chief Accountant, Amy Steele, CFO, Ken Johnson, for their advice throughout the development of both the budget and our strategic plan. One of the most significant elements of the PCAOB's 2014 budget and related strategic plan, as Bill notes, is its emphasis on the use of economic analysis in the PCAOB's work. We've had economists in our Office of Research and Analysis for years. Earlier this year, we hired our first economist in the Office of the Chief Auditor. We plan to hire additional economists to work with him to embed economic thought and tools in the standard setting process from the early development of ideas and alternatives to solve problems in audit practice, through the stages of soliciting public comment and right on through the preparation of a new standard. These economists will work closely with economists in our Office of Research and Analysis, who can provide a fresh review of the economic effects of the standards. As we've built this foundation, we've kept an eye toward broader implications of our work and our broader uses of economic thought. After several months of planning, I'm pleased that we were able to announce earlier this month the formation of a new PCAOB Center for Economic Analysis, headed by the renowned University of Chicago economist Luigi Zingales. Under Professor Zingales' leadership, we plan to attract other top economists to work in the center, to advise us on how economic theory, analysis, and tools can enhance the effectiveness of PCAOB programs. In addition, we hope to spur research on the role of the audit in capital formation and investor protection. But the budget also reflects several key developments last year, key developments that run through and underline the needs and the decisions of the budget. These include, first, further development of our broker-dealer oversight framework, including the Commission's adoption of final rule amendments requiring audits of registered broker-dealers to be considered under PCAOB standards, our adoption of attestation and audit standards for broker-dealer audits, and the issuance of our second report on our interim inspection program. Big development. Second, our progress on the near-term priorities I expressed in the Chairman's message of the strategic plan that we adopted last year, related to enhancing inspection and standard-setting processes and analysis and more timely issuance of inspection reports and the more timely determination on firms' remediation efforts, developing audit quality indicators, doing more to help audit committees understand and use our work. Based on this project, there are several new permanent work streams in the new strategic plan, and these appear in our budget. Another development greater access to cross-border inspections based on new cooperation agreements that we've reached or are close to finalizing with several foreign counterparts, part of the travel budget that Bill alluded to. Renewal in July 2013 of the European Commission's adequacy decision, which allowed us to renew the many cooperation agreements we already had with oversight bodies in Europe, a continuing area of interest and effort for us. The Memorandum of Understanding on Enforcement Cooperation that was reached with Chinese regulators, a breakthrough resulting in the delivery of enforcement documents here for the first time. PCAOB's leadership role in the International Forum of Independent Audit Regulators, which appears prominently in the budget, which Louis Ferguson will touch on. Issuance earlier this year of PCAOB staff guidance on professional skepticism and internal control over financial reporting that addressed the urgent need for improvement in these areas. Finally, looking forward, our proposal to change the auditor's reporting model to better suit the needs of modern capital markets, which I hope will engage the public in a broad, constructive debate about the role of the audit, fostering broader and cheaper access to capital for businesses and entrepreneurs. These were developments of the last year that heavily influence our programmatic needs and our plans for the coming year. The 2014 budget provides for a modest increase in staff, primarily in inspections and economics, to address these developments and support the strategic plan. Given all the work and support that's gone into the budget, I'm comfortable that it's appropriate and it should be submitted to the SEC for its approval. I want to thank all of you again for the work that you did in getting us here. And I want to turn to my fellow board members now for statements they may wish to make. We will use our usual procedure of going back and withholding questions until board members have made a statement, and then we will have time for questions and discussions. Board Member Harris.
Well, Mr. Chairman, first of all, I second and endorse everything you've said about Darrell Pauly. Darrell, I've said it to you privately, but I'll say it publicly as well. I think you've been an absolutely invaluable resource throughout your tenure here to the PCAOB. I think Mark Olson made a number of terrific decisions, but I think hiring you was clearly within the top 1, 2, or 3. You had a distinguished career at the Fed where you could have easily retired, gone fishing or whatever you do as your hobby. For whatever reason, I guess he, based upon his relationship with you, was able to convince you to come here. I thought you brought the background, which was absolutely ideal for what we needed at the time. You made some very difficult decisions, which I'm aware of, which are not public information, but you made tough decisions, which I think have left the board a far better place than what you inherited. So I want to wish you well. You also were responsible, I know, at the Fed for implementing on a voluntary basis 404. You didn't have to do that. The Fed didn't have to do that. I thought that led an example throughout the rest of government. And we went from AS2 to AS5. I had something to do with internal controls when I was working on the Hill, and therefore probably more than most appreciate the work that you did here in terms of the implementation of 404. I think you bring a background of being a CPA, which is extraordinarily important to the board at that time. You've overseen, I think brilliantly, a huge expansion in terms of the PCAOB. And I think I could go on at quite some length, but this is a budget meeting and a strategic planning meeting, not a coronation, but I think you deserve absolutely all the best in whatever you decide to do. And I also think that one of your greatest strengths was hiring good people, you know, a couple of whom are right behind you, but I think one of the attributes of a leader is hiring good people, and I think that you and the chairman you've worked for have done an extremely good job. Having said that, turning to the budget and the strategic plan, Mr. Chairman, I support the board's 2013 and 2017 strategic plan and the accompanying budget. The strategic plan, as you mentioned, builds upon last year's near-term priorities and includes an increased focus on the use of economic analysis within the PCAOB. This plan also outlines the mandate and composition of a new Center for Economic Analysis, discusses the board's commitment to enhanced audit committee communications, and captures the changing regulatory landscape for broker-dealer reporting and its effect on our interim inspection program. You, Mr. Chairman, have outlined the major priorities of the board but I'd like to address a few ongoing interests of mine which are reflected in the plan before us today. The strategic plan appropriately continues to emphasize the board's statutory investor protection mission. It's important for us to keep the statutory directive in mind and to continually remind the auditing profession that its primary client is the investor community. The profession must never lose sight of its public watchdog function. The board's strategic plan includes an examination of, quote, the trends in the profession and the future direction of the profession, close quote. We observed a growing rate of increase in consulting revenue and acquisition activity by firms over the past several years. Consulting revenue for the Big Four global network firms has increased over the past 5 years by 33% versus only 6% in audit revenue. Based on acquisition and other activities at the firms, it is likely that consulting revenue will continue its rise. In the past 18 months, the Big Four global network firms and their affiliates have announced over 36 acquisitions of consulting businesses, with the Big Four U.S. firms accounting for 19 of those acquisitions. Recently, one of these firms announced the starting of an investment fund with the aim to invest in, partner with, and acquire organizations that specialize in data and analytics tools and assets. These developments point to a future in which the relationship between the largest audit firms and their clients will become ever more complex. As outlined in the strategic plan, the board will remain focused on holding auditors accountable to the high standards of professional independence, objectivity, and professional skepticism through its inspections and enforcement divisions. The board also recognizes as an opportunity in its strategic plan a need to, quote, deepen its understanding of audit quality through analyzing the changing and evolving business models of the major audit firms to understand the implications of such models for audit quality, close quote. That's only appropriate. As the largest firms grow and diversify, they must not only ensure the total independence of their audit practices, they must maintain and enhance their focus on investor protection through a superior audit quality. I also believe that the board should monitor any sources of risk to the profession. This was a recommendation made by the Bush administration Treasury Department's Advisory Committee on the auditing profession in 2008, which I continue to support. With respect to audit quality, this strategic plan also highlights the board's initiative to develop audit quality indicators focusing not only on indicators at the firm level, but at the engagement level as well. Developing such indicators should allow firms to compete first and foremost based on audit quality, and should be of value not only to audit firms, but to audit committees, investors, and PCAOB inspectors alike. I support this being a high priority of the board and look forward to the issuance of a concept release on the subject. Additionally, this strategic plan includes information about our performance standards initiative, which includes, for example, related parties, fair value measurements, the use of specialists, and firm supervision. Our inspection staff continue to find high rates of audit failures in the area of revenue recognition, and this topic as well should be addressed in 2014. The board will also continue to monitor current events and emerging trends that may lead to increased audit risk. For example, cybersecurity risk has recently become a topic of concern for the SEC and other financial regulators. Such risk pose significant issues for companies such as increased security costs, loss of material intellectual property, claims by customers, and litigation. Therefore, I believe that auditors must examine the internal controls companies have in place to address such risks. I think it is important that the board will consider forming an internal task force and preparing a practice alert relating to cybersecurity and its impact on audits. I support the formation of such a task force and the issuance of an alert if the board deems such an alert appropriate. The board's international agenda, as described in the strategic plan, captures the increasingly important role that the Office of International Affairs plays at the board. In addition to negotiating agreements and memoranda of understanding with a large number of our foreign counterparts, the budget and strategic plan note the United States' role in chairing the International Forum of Independent Audit Regulators, a group consisting of some 46 independent audit regulators from around the world. As noted in the strategic plan, quote, PCAOB inspections continue to find high rates of deficiencies at the global networks, close quote. Under the chairmanship of Louis Ferguson, IFER has initiated and published its first survey of inspection findings across its member regulators and has committed to repeat this survey annually. What the survey results clearly demonstrate is that regulators around the world are encountering similar issues with respect to audit quality. The strategic plan recognizes that our participation in international forums like IFER will enable us to contribute to the international dialogue about how regulators can address these issues in a meaningful and timely manner. A brief word on China. While we have made some progress in improving our relationship with the China Securities Regulation Commission and the Ministry of Finance, we must continue to work towards a broader agreement that enables us to inspect PCAOB-registered firms in China. I also believe that the Board needs to actively consider alternative actions with regard to jurisdictions that disallow PCAOB inspections in order to remain faithful to our legislative mandate. I fully support our ongoing focus on timely remediation of the Board's Inspection Division findings. In 2013, our inspection staff made significant inroads in addressing the backlog and remediation determinations relating to its inspection findings and providing additional information about the remediation process. The 2013 through 2017 strategic plan builds on these efforts by requiring that we update the PCAOB's 2006 remediation release to further enhance firms' understanding of the Board's criteria and process for evaluating their remedial actions. I support this updated release being completed in 2014. An important component of remediation is effective root cause analysis. I've heard that some firms would like more guidance from the Board in this area. In the strategic plan, we have committed ourselves to issuing public guidance on how we expect firms to conduct root cause analysis of systemic risks. I believe such guidance would benefit from examples of what may be considered effective practices used by firms to address their root cause problems. The Board is also planning to enhance the information contained on our website about registered firms. Such information will be of value to investors, audit committees, and others by improving the transparency of the Board's activities. I especially would like to see a tool on our website that enables investors and other interested stakeholders to easily identify the auditor of an issuer by simply inputting the issuer's ticker symbol. That way, an investor could readily identify the issuer's auditor and through other avenues on the website do his or her own due diligence regarding that auditor. Our Office of Information Technology has developed a prototype for accomplishing this. I'm hopeful that it will be finalized and made operational in 2014. As noted in the strategic plan, the Board will be focusing on internal guidance for the integration of economic analysis into our program activities to aid in the evaluation of economic considerations, including costs and benefits. While I believe we have always included economic considerations in what we do, I support the Board's added focus on formalizing the incorporation of economic analysis into our activities. In light of the passage of the Jobs Act, such analysis has assumed a more critical role in our standard-setting process, and the strategic plan appropriately highlights our efforts in this area. Finally, I would like to say a word about our budget. I believe the proposed budget of $258.4 million supports the strategic plan and reflects the appropriate resource needs for the Board to achieve its goals and operations and objectives for the coming year. While I support the 2014 budget before us today, I do so with the caveat that the PCAOB has historically underspent its budget. This will be the case again in 2013. Though we have underspent in the past for reasons such as difficulty in identifying qualified candidates for open positions, I believe we need to do better in the future. That said, I am pleased that any underspending of funds in the current fiscal year reduces the accounting support fee for the next fiscal year. In sum, I believe that strategic plan and budget are well crafted to address the Board's statutory mandate under the Sarbanes-Oxley Act to protect the interest of investors and further the public interest in the preparation of informative, accurate, and independent audit reports for companies the securities of which are sold to and held by and for public investors. And before closing, I join you, Mr. Chairman, in acknowledging the contributions once again of Darrell, Bill Wiggins, Jim Hearn, Yas Masajan, and Bobby Reichart on the budget and for their work on the strategic plan, along with that of Phoebe Brown, the PCAOB's corporate secretary. And I also want to acknowledge with you, sir, Mr. Chairman, the staff at the SEC for their assistance on the development of both the budget and our strategic plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Board Member Ferguson.
Thank you. I support the board's budget for 2014 and the accompanying strategic plan for 2013 through 2017. I want to note at the outset that the single-digit increase in percentage terms in this year's budget is more modest than prior years' increases in percentage terms. And while it does not necessarily represent that we are achieving a steady state, I do think it reflects the fact that we are achieving maturity as a regulator. In 2013, the board focused on careful oversight of its budgetary resources to manage the reduced spending mandated by the sequester order. We tried to do this without sacrificing achievement of the goals and priorities set out in the 2013 budget and the prior strategic plan. The sequestration order has posed significant challenges to this agency, as I suspect it's done to all other agencies. Fortunately, we've been blessed with a very talented and hard-working staff to advise us on the sequester rule. The Office of General Counsel at the PCAOB has advised the boards about the legal requirements of the sequester, and the budget staff has advised us on alternatives for achieving our goals in the face of the reductions in spending. Thanks in large part to their work, I'm satisfied that we've made good progress toward the tasks mandated by Congress in the Sarbanes-Oxley and Dodd-Frank Acts, despite the constraints imposed by the sequester. Indeed, we've been able to make progress on our important near-term priorities. As I mentioned in my statement last year and as reflected in the near-term priorities, the PCAOB is working to find ways to improve audit quality, including communicating our findings more effectively to the audit firms we regulate and to the public. In 2013, we commenced a project led by our Office of Research and Analysis to develop an understanding of the drivers of audit quality. And I look forward to a concept release in this area, which we anticipate issuing in the first half of 2014. The PCAOB is also making progress in its outreach to and interaction with audit committees. In 2013, we've begun to reach out to this constituency in new ways to help audit committees understand our work and how our work can inform their work in dealing with the auditors they oversee. The 2014 budget provides for a new Center for Economic Analysis. I strongly support the development of this new center as it offers the board the opportunity to attract top-flight thinkers to the PCAOB. Our hope and expectation is that they will assist the PCAOB in looking creatively at, among other things, the operation of PCAOB programs, the role and effectiveness of auditors in a rapidly evolving business environment, and the effects of audit regulation in increasing investor protection. This new center is an experiment, and as with any experiment, we must review and evaluate as it evolves to ensure it is contributing to achievement of our mission. Overall, however, I feel strongly that this is the kind of innovative step that an organization such as the PCAOB should be taking to make creative contributions toward fulfilling our mission. The 2014 budget also provides additional funds for the PCAOB's participation in the International Forum of Independent Audit Regulators, IFIAR, in the coming year. In 2013, I was elected to the position of chair of that organization, and I'm deeply grateful to my fellow board members and to the staff of the PCAOB for the support they've given me in this role. Our Office of International Affairs has led that effort, but we expect to draw on resources in 2014 from the Office of Research and Analysis, the Division of Registration and Inspections, and the Division of Enforcement and Investigations. Audit quality is a global issue, and many of the public issuers audited by firms registered with the PCAOB are multinational companies listed on several exchanges and audited by global network firms employing member firms in many different countries. For this reason, global improvements in audit quality directly benefit stakeholders in the United States. Indeed, many of the priorities of IFIAR echo the near-term priorities of the board, particularly the priority to improve the communication of the regulator's findings to stakeholders. IFER's work contributes to global audit qualities in many ways, including by assisting developing and mature regulators to refine their inspection programs through a multi-day inspections workshop. We're working to develop common views on significant policy issues to be sure that the collective experience of regulators is gathered, analyzed, and communicated to the audit stakeholders and standard setters. One of the most significant work streams of IFER, to which the PCAOB contributes heavily, is the IFER Survey of Global Inspections findings. Through this survey, we develop a better understanding of the types of issues with audit quality that regulators are seeing around the world. In 2014, this budget allows the PCAOB to support IFER actively and to play a leading role. And in summing up, I want to thank all of you, and I include people in the Office of Budget and at the SEC, who basically, and in the Office of the Secretary here, who spend your lives doing this. It's difficult work, it's hard work, it takes a long time, and we are deeply grateful to all of you. I also specifically want to acknowledge you, Darrell. I mean, your contributions to this organization have been exemplary. I couldn't say it better than anyone else has said it here. And all I can say is that while we wish you Godspeed in everything that you may do from now on, know that you're going to be sorely missed here, and you leave a lot of people who are not happy that you're going.
Thank you.
So with that, I support this budget.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Mr. Hanson.
Thanks. Well, with the comments my fellow board members have already said, I don't have much to say beyond that, but I am going to focus on just a couple things. I won't put you through my reading of my entire statement. I'm just going to highlight a number of things. First, on the strategic plan, reflecting back on last year and comments that I made that the plan is intended to be a high-level roadmap for how the board will achieve its mission to protect the interests of investors and further the public interest in the preparation of informative, independent, accurate audit reports. Although we've got the same basic format, I think we have refocused some of our goals in 2013 to reflect the board's effective oversight of the auditing profession, to make a constructive impact in the market for audit services, and to foster an environment of dedicated people and a positive workplace environment. I want to make a few comments on the near-term priorities that we identified last year. We've made progress on each of these, but I view them each as multi-year efforts that will continue into the future. These priorities include improvements to our inspection reports and a remediation determination process, developing audit quality indicators, enhancing our inspection finding analysis capabilities, clarifying our standard-setting framework, and increasing the board's interaction with audit committees. With a commitment from our staff to each of these priorities, we have accomplished a lot. Our inspection reports are being issued more quickly, although we insist on maintaining high quality and consistency in our reporting process. We have added information to the inspection reports relative to some of the auditing standards that are implicated in the findings, and we hope to do more of that in the future. We've started outreach on how to improve the content and readability of the inspection reports and look forward to even more dialogue on that in the future. We've received some really good ideas from a number of constituents. On the remediation process, I won't go into details on what we've done there, but I'm going to echo something that Board Member Harris alluded to, in that I really hope to see the board issue a general purpose type report on the observations about actions that firms have taken. This is one of our most important levers to improve audit quality, and sharing what we've seen that we think is effective is very important to letting all firms understand what they can do better. The points made about the audit quality indicators, I strongly support that. I'm looking forward to the concept release we hope to issue early next year. The data analysis capabilities of the board, there's been substantial progress made on putting all of our findings in one place, and the ability for us to do the internal analysis on that. I hope that eventually those will form a basis for a report to the public on some of the things that we've seen that would be helpful pointers for firms on what is the recipe for getting it right. And lastly, on the audit committee outreach, we've done a lot. I'm personally invested in seeking out as many opportunities as I can to talk with audit committees, and I'm hoping that next year we can get to the point in our plan for actually hosting some meetings of audit committee members specifically for them, and to increase our outreach to the smaller and mid-sized company audit committee members, which is a difficult constituency to get to. Couple comments on the economic analysis. Although the board has historically considered the potential advantages and disadvantages of its regulatory activities, we are now beginning to educate ourselves on a more formal level and availing ourselves to the expertise of economists in the area of economic analysis of regulatory activities. To that end, we have expanded our team of economists. We currently have 4 economists in our Office of Research and Analysis, and as of next Monday, we'll have 2 in the Office of the Chief Auditor to help us integrate economic analysis directly into our standard setting process and getting it in from the ground up on the standards. We will further expand our team of economists in 2014 and also continue to refine our approach to economic analysis, including by finalizing our internal guidance on economic analysis that we're currently reviewing. In addition, the board, as has been reflected here already, recently announced the Center for Economic Analysis, which I think is a good step in the right direction, has the potential to really up our game. But I do think we need to be careful in implementing this new center to make sure that we have appropriate focus on the center and appropriate coordination amongst our divisions. Prioritizing our standard setting agenda, turning to another topic, is really critical. Although our integration of economic analysis into standard setting has caused some delays, we have an active schedule for the coming year. In addition to taking a step forward, creating a more comprehensive and accessible system of auditing standards through our reorganization project, we plan to work on a series of important auditor performance standards, including related parties, auditors' responsibilities for other firms, accountants and specialists, going concern, fair value and estimates, confirmation, and subsequent events. Those are currently on the agenda that everybody has seen. I anticipate that we'll add to this list of consideration of auditing revenues related to, or auditing issues related to the new accounting standard on revenue recognition. Board Member Harris has mentioned this several times, the need to have guidance in this area for current standards and current audits, and I think we need to get ahead of the curve relative to the impending changes that the Financial Accounting Standards Board and the International Accounting Standards Board will have in the near term. So on the strategic plan, I do want to thank everybody that's been involved in the process. It is an organization-wide challenge. So just a couple comments on the budget. I know Bill thoroughly went through all the details. I'm not going to repeat all of them, and I do support the budget that we're being asked to approve today. But like Steve Harris, I do have concerns about the underspend this year. If you look at next year's budget compared to what we're actually projected to spend for 2013, it's an over 15% increase, and I hope that over time we can get better at the aim that we have for the spending level that we approve here today, and that we level out eventually at a more stable basis. And I will have a few questions for the staff on a couple things related to that. So I'd like to join my fellow board members in thanking the PCAOB staff in their efforts to put all this together for us today, as well as the staff of the SEC. And I will echo the comments that others have made about special thank you to Daryl and the efforts you've made over the years here. And by the time we get done with Jeanette, I'm sure that we will be ready to saint you. So thank you for your efforts, and wish you the best of luck in your future endeavor. Thank you.
Board Member Franzel.
Thank you. I support the proposed 2014 budget and the strategic plan being presented to the board today. The staff have worked very diligently on this, and I want to thank you for all of the consideration of the various strategies and resources and assumptions needed to fulfill our mission of protecting investors and furthering the public interest in the preparation of high-quality independent audits. I want to note that the time frames that you all did this under this year were fantastic when compared to last year, and we really appreciate having the time as a board to really analyze and consider these numbers and have the appropriate back and forth with the staff. And so I commend you for those efforts. And there was a lot of added complexity this year with the sequester that happened in 2013 and then the anticipated sequester that will happen in 2014. And we have an awful lot of numbers being thrown around here. So when you compare the 2014 budget to the originally approved 2013 budget, we're looking at a 5.2% increase. But when you compare it to the revised spending plan, it's a 10.6% increase. And then on top of that, we had this underspend. And so when you compare the 2014 budget to our projected spending for this year, we're looking at an increase of about 15%. And that sounds like a big increase. But in my view, and I've been around government many years and I've been in bad funding situations where we've had to start and stop, and I've seen kind of what can happen in those times of uncertainty. And I think much of the difference in our underspend this year was due to the uncertainty that we had for the first few months of the year, not knowing how the sequester would impact us, and just being extra conservative as an organization to be sure that we would not get ourselves into trouble later. Having said that, though, it's also very difficult to gear back up to a more normal level of operations, and so we'll have that challenge in 2014 once we finalize our new revised spending plan with the sequester, which I think we'll need to do again in 2014. We will have the challenge of getting our operations back up to something of a normal type of operations and predictable. So I'm hoping that the budget uncertainties can stabilize in the future. But we do have that added challenge this year of getting back up to speed. I am not quite as alarmed about the underspend as some of my federal board members or fellow board members because of how difficult it is to keep adjusting, and sometimes overcompensating is the right thing to do. And I think that's what we did this year. So I believe that the 2014 budget reflects a balance of operational needs and a judicious allocation of resources while also trying to restore those activities that we had to really scale back on in 2013. Today we're also issuing our updated strategic plan, and I place a high value on that exercise. I know it's a very difficult exercise and it involves almost everybody in this organization, but it is well worth the efforts that we put into that to guide our programmatic and our budgetary decisions. So it's a valuable process, it's difficult, but I think we have a good product. And the value and impact of this process, I think, we can see by citing all of our accomplishments, and I won't reiterate those. The advantage of going last is I don't have to go through the entire program here. But I do want to highlight a few things, especially the progress that we have made in the near-term priorities that we set forth last year. It's really, I think, amazing how when we set forth these 6 different areas of priority and put some focus on it, what we've been able to accomplish as an organization. And I know we're not done yet, and a lot of these are now being baked into our normal operations and strategy. So like Jay, I'm going to just mention a few things. The first was improving the timeliness, content, and readability of our inspection reports. The staff did a commendable job of clearing a backlog of old reports while at the same time bringing the current reporting into a more timely state and just focusing on timeliness in general. The staff also made some changes to the reports this year and continue to work on additional changes going forward. And I'm very encouraged by the work that's being done on, I guess we've given it sort of a nickname of an activity report, but really a summary report in 2014 to cover the 2012 and 2013 inspection results. And so if we can achieve that, that will be tremendous. And I also really encourage the staff to think creatively about sort of short, simple ways that we can put out reports and summary information about inspections. One lesson I learned at GAO was that the longer the report is, the more difficult it is to get out. So as we keep experimenting here, I'm sure that we can come up with some good ways of getting valuable information out quickly on the results of our inspections. Similar to the progress made on inspection reports, very impressive progress made on remediation determinations. Again, we had an old backlog there that the staff made tremendous progress on, while at the same time getting more current in general, and also putting out information about the remediation process for use by the firms. And I look forward to further development of information to be put out, as some of the other board members mentioned, information about what makes for a successful remediation, more information about what we expect, because this is such an important part of improving audit quality out there. Our project to identify audit quality measures and audit quality indicators is off to an excellent start. I'm looking forward to the concept release that will come out soon, and this project will really, I think, help to focus the debate on audit quality and focus all of the various stakeholders in the process, from the firms to the audit committees and investors and others, on audit quality, and frankly should help inform our regulatory processes as well. As other board members have mentioned, we've made tremendous progress in enhancing our analytical and data tracking abilities to take a look at our inspection results for our oversight processes, and that's going to really continue to help us out in the long haul. We have developed an enhanced framework for standard setting, which will also be a very important foundation for our economic analysis and the guidance that the staff has drafted in that regard as we move forward to really incorporate economic analysis into our standard setting process. And I know that a lot of people have interest in that. And finally, our project on outreach and interaction to audit committees has been very well received, and I think audit committees have expressed a real positive reaction to us being open to working with them in their role in overseeing auditing, because we all have a common goal of high quality and independent audits. And so I look forward to continued progress in all of these areas in 2014. Also, we've got some major new initiatives in 2014. I'm just going to mention a couple of them. The first is the Center for Economic Analysis. I very much support this proposal, and I agree there will be a long-term benefit to this. We have a lot of details yet to be worked out, and we'll have to monitor this closely. Secondly, looking at adopting performance measures and benchmarks. We've got a lot of performance measures that deal with sort of counting things, and now I think we're at a point in the stage of the PCAOB where we can really start measuring our impact over time. And so I look forward to the staff and the Center for Economic Analysis working on performance measures as well. I want to note, in the Office of Administration, we continue to mature as an organization, putting in place good practices that you would expect to find in a professional services organization. So I want to compliment Daryl and his staff and Human Resources and IT as well, and look forward to continued evolution in those areas. So to sum up, I believe that the budget we're voting on today appropriately reflects the board's strategic priorities and resources for 2014. I want to also join my fellow board members in thanking the staff for their efforts in connection with this. I know it's an awful lot of work, and so I'm glad that we've gotten to this point. And Daryl, I congratulate you on a very successful public career of public service, and I'll bet you're awfully glad this is your last PCAOB budget cycle.
Nobody's not answering that question.
But he's smiling very big.
But I do thank you for the comment.
Well, I know board members have some questions and the chance to have a little dialogue with the staff. One of the benefits of going last with the statement is you go first with the questions, Jeanette. So.
All right. Well, I saved some of my statement for my questions. So I do want to ask a little bit of detail about the Center for Economic Analysis. As I mentioned in my statement, I very much support this effort. But we have an awful lot of details to work out, and so we'll need to monitor this during the year. But could you elaborate a bit on how you built the budget for the Center for Economic Analysis? What are some of the major components in terms of personnel, consulting, and other activities that we expect in 2014?
The 2014 budget includes $1.2 million for the new Center for Economic Analysis. It includes costs for 5 new positions and 4 consultants in the office. And much of the work in that first year will be devoted to planning what the work of the center will be going forward.
Do we anticipate the 1.2 million to be sort of what we're going to spend year over year, or do we need to wait until we have more specific plans? What does it look like going forward?
Since this will be the first year of the center and it'll just be putting together its work plan for the first time, it's difficult to know what the recurring costs will be going forward. The PCAOB budget's 1 year at a time. I suspect it's safe to say that the costs in the next year will be the cost of 2014 and the headcount going forward, any changes the board decides to make based on the operation of the center in 2014.
Okay, thank you. Another big focus is building our permanent broker-dealer inspection program. Can you discuss the budget items that are going toward building that program and how we're reaching that point, I guess, where we will be making decisions about a permanent program?
Where do
This
I
is
begin
Robert
with
Madej
that?
of Divisions.
Thank you. A couple of the factors as we go into 2014, we're looking to continue the process that we've started and build on that. I think the expectation is that we will inspect about 60 firms and 100 audits by those firms. 2014 will be our last year for inspecting under AICPA standards. As we move into 2015, those audits that will be inspected will be performed under PCAOB standards, given the changes the SEC made to Rule 17A5. So our building of our budget for that relates to our estimates of the resources we would need, not only to conduct those inspections, which is a major part of our budget, but also to continue to develop the program leading up to a permanent inspection program, building the resources, building the approach toward that inspection program.
I guess with next year's budget process, we'll be at a point where we might be looking at what the permanent program could look like in terms of size and budget.
Well, that's certainly going to be dependent on what we ultimately get to as to the scope of the permanent program, which is one of the objectives of the interim program, is to help inform the board about that scope and inform the board so it can make a determination of that scope. For 2015, we're very interested in conducting the inspections of the audits done under PCAOB standards to help develop that approach to inspecting, but also we think it's important to have done that to inform the board about the scope of a permanent program. We think we'd be remiss if we didn't have some inspections under PCAOB standards to assist in that process.
Thank you.
Board Member Hanson.
I'm going to put the sequestration guru under the spotlight here. So, Bill, you'd mentioned some comments about sequestration, and I know each of us have touched on it a little bit, and I know in last year's annual report we had some discussion about some question marks about it, but if you wouldn't mind, Jim, just maybe fleshing out for a few minutes the how it affects us, how it affected us in 2013, how it affects us in 2014, that'd be really helpful.
Sure, thanks. Well, for 2014, the board adopted and the SEC approved a budget of $246 million. Subsequent to that approval in February, the SEC approval, the sequestration order came out on March 1st for 2013, which reduced the PCAOB's budget by $12 million. So our effective operating budget level for 2013 was $234 million. For 2014, the sequester order came out last year and reduced our budget by $18 million. And the sequester law is pretty complicated, but based on talking to OMB, we understand that the net effect of the sequestration is that if the budget that is before you today is approved at $258 million, the net effect will be to reduce it by $6 million, and the operating level will be $252 million for 2014.
Wait, so how's that work again? So we get the money that we didn't spend last year, we billed for it to the issuers, we collected the $12 million, couldn't spend it in 2013, the year in right now, but we can spend it next year?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I'm still processing on that. So.
There's a certain subcategory of organizations and agencies in the federal budget whereby it's really not a permanent cancellation of authority to spend. It's basically a delay from one year to the next. And we are one of those very few. So that's how you get at the net that Jim alluded to.
So on an ongoing basis, if we had a year, for example, that the subsequent year's budget was identically the same amount and the sequestration percent applied the same, it really have no effect. It was just the 2 years would net out against each other.
Yep.
Well, as I process that, I'll turn it over to Lou for a few further questions.
Ferguson, yeah.
In the letters from the SEC last year, we were asked to consider non-monetary, or rather non-compensatory, satisfaction and retention measures for our employees. It does not mean that the organization itself wouldn't necessarily spend money, but things that did not involve necessarily raising pay or giving people more pay. What does the 2014 budget, how have you dealt with that in the 2014 budget, and how is it addressed?
Yeah, Lou, let me let me address that one, and then my colleagues can add to it. First of all, let me see if I can describe some of the things we've done in 2013. We did, of course, take the SEC suggestion seriously, and we have spent quite a bit of time thinking about that. But in addition to thinking, the thought that we have given it, there are a number of things that I can point to that I think would be responsive to the SEC's recommendation. First, this is year 2 of offering management training classes and supervisory training classes to our staff. We also have established a website for staff to locate and enroll in other training activities that would be of interest to them and would be of relevance to their jobs. There have been a number of social events, as our website has chronicled, in the regional offices and in Washington. And perhaps most notable, we have introduced the Superior Achievement Award, which will be an annual award for deserving staff who have distinguished themselves in their work. For 2014, we intend to do all of this, but to expand on it, Kim Gates has established a working group with representatives from various offices and divisions. This group will plan and manage these and new events in 2014. There's already a list of things that they are considering that have not been advertised as of yet. One of the things that I would like to see that we are already working on is some increased attention to financial education, whether it be better understanding how Fidelity works and how your investments through Fidelity work, but also other investments that you might have, perhaps some estate planning, some other things, paying for college education, a lot of financial education activities that we think would be beneficial and would also help people better understand the benefits that we provide. We have spent considerable amount of time looking at each of our benefit plans, most recently the medical plan, watching it carefully as the Affordable Care Act and its requirements unfold. So education in general, but financial education, understanding our benefits, is going to be very important. Also, taking a look at things such as health fairs and other items like that we believe employees would find beneficial. As the work of this group becomes, as they make some definite decisions, we'll certainly advertise this, but we have representatives from across the organization taking a look at about this, and I think we could provide a fairly impressive list of things that we've done and intend to do.
What about group activities for employees, whether they're volunteer things or outings or whatever, things that allow people to act together to kind of build morale?
Right. I don't have any specific things to mention at the moment, but I know that there are some of those on the list. There's one.
Washington Nationals, not at the baseball
Pardon me?
park. The Washington Nationals.
We
not at
did,
the
we
baseball
did,
park.
the
We
Washington
do that once a
Nationals.
year.
But there is one activity, and I can't recall the exact name of it, but it's a global challenge, and it has to do with teamwork, building camaraderie and collaboration with your teammates. There are other things that are on the list, but I don't have the specifics at hand right now. But we're working on it.
Board Member Harris?
Well, as I noted in my statement, historically, the PCAOB has underspent its budget due to hiring difficulties and other reasons. And I was wondering if you'd briefly describe how this historical trend was considered in developing this year's budget, and would you describe what we plan to do differently in 2014 to address the hiring situation?
The PCAOB builds its annual budget request from the bottom up. Each year, the budget office asks the divisions and offices to submit their requests for the resources that they need, like staff positions, consulting, travel, things like that, that they need to carry out to help the organization carry out its statutory responsibilities. For 2014, we thought that sequestration might be in effect again, but we started preparing a 2014 preliminary budget still based on the division and office assessments of what they would need to do the job in 2014. Now, historically, the underspend has been trending down over the last few years, and for this year, our expected underspend of 4% relative to the revised spending plan post-sequestration in 2013. It's not that large given that 2013 was the first year sequestration affected the organization, and that was an anomaly in the PCAOB's 10-year experience. And so the board took a conservative approach, as has been indicated by others here today, to committing resources this year, given the cash-based nature of how the organization operates and the lack of experience that we've had with sequestration since it was the first year. And other reasons for the underspend are the relatively small underspend are typical ones related to programmatic areas where there's been a large amount of uncertainty about whether resources will be actually required. As for your hiring question, it appears we've had good results this year, especially in the key programmatic area of inspections. DRI accounts for about 2/3 of the total headcount at PCAOB, and it's on course to hit the end of December the headcount goal of 518 positions under the revised spending plan. In 2014, the expected headcount increases that have been already discussed are spread across many divisions and offices, and they're not just concentrated in one division, so we're not expecting it to be quite as difficult to fill just because it's one kind of position.
So what was the impact of the 2013 sequestration on the PCAOB board's budget?
Well, one big effect was that we had to, as has been mentioned, put a lot of time and energy into developing an alternate budget for 2013 that we've been calling the revised spending plan to comply with a $12 million reduction. In developing that plan, our goal was to protect mission-centered activities and to make adjustments instead to areas, for example, training, that could be deferred in the near term, but not indefinitely or permanently deferred. In terms of the overall effects of sequestration, we had managerial opportunity costs, given the amount of time and attention, uncertainty connected to sequestration. For about more than half of the year, we weren't sure exactly how it would apply. Out of caution and uncertainty related to the sequestration order, we had some slowing down of commitments that might, in retrospect, have been overreactions in some areas. But we will be doing our quarterly report in January for the whole year, 2013, and we'll be able to analyze better where we spent money and how that compares to the revised spending plan and the pre-sequestration budget.
Well, unless there are further questions, I want to thank
Actually, I do have further questions, but I want to defer to my colleagues if they have any.
Go to another round or whatever.
Another round. If
Do
anybody
another
has
round?
another,
Just,
if anybody has any questions,
Yeah, other?
Sure, I'll ask another question. We've been talking about personnel and ways of recognizing personnel and without necessarily doing it through salary, and other ways of making jobs more, I would say, more rewarding and offering more opportunities and so on. And I noticed that we do have several employee surveys in the budget. And could you elaborate on the use of those surveys and how we're going to put them in place?
Jeanette, the primary survey that we have is a repeat of the engagement survey that we had several years ago. This will be the third time that we have conducted this survey. It is currently scheduled for May of 2014. Probably would take a couple months to get the results analyzed and get something in form that we would share with the board and with the directors. But that's our primary survey tool for 2014, and it is in the budget, and we do plan to move forward with that.
Okay, terrific. I encourage you in those efforts. Thanks.
I had a follow-on question on the ground-up, the bottoms-up approach to building the budget, and I appreciate that with the inspection staff and planning out all the places we have to go around the globe to inspect, that you have to make some assumptions about what countries we'll get into, and some of those countries we don't today have a cooperative arrangement to allow us to go into there, and we're hoping that we will in the future. Oh, Suzanne's going to come up to answer this question. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you.
Kinzer. So to the extent that we bottom up built the budget and we're hiring the people to support the hope that we get into some of these countries, can you give us an idea of how many countries are in that hope for list that we don't currently have an arrangement for? And to the extent that we don't actually get an arrangement to go in and inspect, what do our people do that we're planning to have do those inspections?
Sure. Our budget includes provision for 33 jurisdictions, and in 2014, 10 of them are in a situation where we're uncertain in terms of whether we'll have the cooperative arrangements. But we are confident that in our estimate in terms of those countries, and to the extent that we aren't able to get into any of those jurisdictions, we would simply redeploy the resources to other key division priorities. That's not new to us. We certainly, part of what we do in inspections is we have to remain on the pulse. There's a lot of things that create uncertainties, including just the outcomes of our existing inspections, and being nimble enough to redeploy and redirect as needed.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, I noticed that one of the things that seems to be happening around here is that economists are popping up in all kinds of places. Lots of different divisions seem to have economists, and a growing number of them. So one of the questions I have is, particularly with respect to the Center for Economic Analysis, how is it envisioned that that center will work with the economists that we have in the Office of in the Standards Division and in the Office of the Research and Analysis?
In concert with the creation of the Center of Economic Analysis, there's also going to be an Economic Coordination Committee that will be chaired by the director of the Center for Economic Analysis, and the center's program leader will be the deputy chair. Other members of that coordination committee will be the chief economist of ORA and the economic advisor to the chief auditor. And there will be two also liaison members, one from DRI and one from the Office of General Counsel. And the purpose of the committee will be to promote a consistent approach to economic questions and facilitate efficient use of the PCAOB resources in economic analysis.
Well, that was my second round of question, but let me follow up on it, because I was wondering how our economists were going to be integrated between the Center of the Office of Research and Analysis and the Office of Chief Auditor. But in terms of accountability, who's going to be accountable? Which economist at the staff level is going to be accountable to do the cost-benefit analysis and the compliance with the Jobs Act?
The economists in the Office of the Chief Auditor will be responsible for the economic analyses related to the development of any PCAOB standards.
And then another question is, what will be the main deliverable or deliverables for the center in 2014?
Since it's the first year of the center, the main task will be to hire staff and to identify and develop useful economic projects to advance the board's mission, and to also hold an economic conference towards the end of the year.
So there'll be a conference and there'll be papers that will be submitted in 2014.
Yes.
Thank you.
Unless there are further questions, I think it's time for me to thank my colleagues on the board for the work they have put in to the strategic plan of the budget, which has been very important and very thoughtful. And to call the question and to ask them all in favor of approving the recommendations, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Those opposed, please say no. Hearing none, the vote is unanimous. The budget and the strategic plan are approved. Thanks again to all. We are adjourned. Yes, Darrell? Yeah?
If I may, before you adjourn, I just wanted to thank the board members for your kind statements today. I appreciate that truly. It has really been a privilege for me to work for this organization for the past 5.5 years, and especially working with you, the board members, and my staff, which is top-notch. I think you will continue to see the same level of service out of these folks that you've been expected to see and have received. Just one final comment, that since the announcement was made today, there have been a number of suggestions for things I do. Go to Ireland and become familiar with the local pubs, play more golf, go fishing, read more books. I have a whole room of those, and spoil my grandchildren. I intend to do all of that prior to sainthood. But seriously, I do plan to continue public service. I have a great desire to do some charity work, particularly charity that involves children, and that's how I hope to spend the majority of my time going forward. But thank you again. You've been very gracious.
Thank you. We're adjourned.